focus more on items that are based on my latest book, The Reset Blueprint. And it's going to be a very intense session in terms of the amount of information that I'm going to share with you, but also a bit relaxed in the sense that we are going to be conversational as well. And as you know, those of you who attended last week's session, this is really about survival tactics as well as reset strategies, but we focus more on the reset strategies. And we painted a context last year that the reason why there is a need to reset is because catalytic events like divorce, like insolvency, like a tsunami, like a pandemic such as what we're experiencing right now, comes to obliterate and almost eliminate that which used to be your normal, and it becomes an old normal. And this catalytic event then gives birth to a new normal, and it is called a new normal because it's unfamiliar, it's non-linear, it is discontinuous, etc. And we have talked about the concept of the VUCA world, meaning that it is more volatile than ever before, it is uncertain, it is complex, and it is ambiguous. And we encourage one another that we should not really melt because of what is happening, but instead we need to have some intentions in our lives whenever we go through any kind of crisis, be it personal, spiritual, financial, organizational, national, and otherwise. And those objectives are number one, to survive the crisis, number two, to let go of the old normal, and number three, to have an intention to thrive, not just to be a victim in the new normal, but to thrive in the new normal. And of course, we explained that there is a need for responsiveness, there is a need for resilience, and there is a need for resetting. And as you know, this particular series focuses more on the resetting. And then, of course, those are the items that we deal with when we assist people to survive. We talked about mental agility last week. And then there are other subjects such as how do you leverage the crisis, issues of emotional intelligence, social intelligence, crisis readiness consciousness, as well as psychological support. These we will not really deal with that much, but the ones on the right, which are the reset elements or the reset strategies, that's what we'll be dealing with. And we dealt with mental agility last time, and we also explained to you what it is about. I will not get into all that because this is last week's session. But if you want to know more about mental agility, of course, I'm sure that each one of you do have the book, The Reset Blueprint. And then, of course, Master Your Thoughts, Transform Your Life is one of my earlier books that also has a lot to say about thought mastery. And then, of course, we showed you on how to respond to an event so that it has got less traumatic effects on you. But today's session, it's really about resetting your sanity. And it is a three-part session that we are going to be dealing with. The first part is resetting your sanity. The second part is resetting your sight. And the third part is resetting your stage. This is what you have paid for. And today we're dealing with sanity. Next Wednesday, we deal with sight. And the last Wednesday, we will deal with resetting the stage. Then we'll go back to a free session, which will be resetting the sails. That is going to be free for everybody. And we'll have obviously a lot of people joining us. But then thereafter, we will then have resetting your standards, your scales, and your sound as a paid up session. So let's get into business and into this session and into this workshop. And feel free to raise your hand if there is something that you want to deal with. I will speak on certain concepts and pause and ask you questions or give you a chance to ask me questions. And you can even try and relate this to your own business, whether you're a banker, whether you're a CFO, whether you're a youth pastor, whether you're a consultant, or all kinds of people that have joined us today. I see Ria there also joining us. Thank you for joining us today. So, resetting, yes, reset your sanity, reset your sight, reset your stage, your sales, standards, scales, and sound. Why these 7 things? Because it is these 7 elements that get disturbed by a crisis, both at a personal level or even at an organizational level, and I dare say even at a national level. These are the 7 elements. Your sanity gets affected by crisis. Your ability to see gets affected by crisis. Hence, you must reset your sight. Your foundation upon which your life or your organization has been built gets disrupted by a crisis. That's why you must reset your stage. You might have been set up to sail in a calm ocean or in a calm river with no challenges and you are cruising, but a storm comes to blow against your boat. You need to reset your sails because the conditions have changed. Crisis comes and disturbs your ability to render acceptable standards of service. You need to reset your standards. Crisis comes and disturb your measuring instruments, or you were set to measure success in a certain way before a crisis came, and now that a crisis has come, you need to reconsider how you measure performance, success, and progress. That is why you need to reset your scales. Resetting your sound is critical because crisis comes and disturb the way we talk to one another, the way we hear and understand one another. And that is why after a crisis has come, you need to reset your sound system, your PA system. Against that background, today's session has to do with sanity, but let me just warn you that resetting is in fact a spiritual and a scientific exercise. I'm making a disclaimer here and a disclosure because you need to understand that if we are going to be speaking in spiritual terms, it is really part of resetting. You cannot fully reset without talking spirituality. And I'm not talking religiosity, I'm talking spirituality. And being spiritual really means that you recognize that you are not apart from God, but you are part of God. You are part of God, not apart from. And being spiritual is also recognizing that there is something that is bigger than you. There is something that is larger than you. So if there is any form of resetting, it means that you need to consider the fact that you are part of a cosmic family and we all belong together and you are connected to so many things, some of which you do not know. And therefore, in your resetting, you need to understand that there's a spiritual element, but there is also a scientific element. Now, I'm not talking religion, I'm talking spirituality. Many people, they are too much attached to religion and actually disconnected from spirituality. Religion really is a vehicle that people use to express their spirituality. And the reason why many a times our religious side of living doesn't work is because we want to be connected to the religion more than we are connected to spirituality. So religion becomes a major thing more than spirituality. And yet religion is really supposed to be a vehicle through which you express your divinity, you express your spirituality. Now, let me once again make a disclaimer that because I'm of the Christian faith, you will find that the language I'm going to be using to express my spirituality in this concept of resetting will be that of the Christian faith. So I'll be using, biblical language. But I've studied a lot of spiritual manuscripts, including the Quran, including the Hindu scriptures, and many more. And I actually study them very deeply. And I can tell you now that there's a lot of concepts that are common, whether it has to do with dignity, has to do with love, has to do with unity, etc. There are many of them, but I will not be referring to them because I express my spirituality through the Christian faith, the Christian religion. And then, secondly, this is also scientific in the sense that there will be definite things that we are going to be talking about which are not abstract, but they are actually real and practical. And when we talk science, you know that science can be studied and it can be applied. Science can be studied and it can be applied, which means that success is a science, meaning that success is not genetic but generative. It is not genetic. In other words, people don't succeed because of heredity. They do not succeed because they inherited the genes of success. People succeed because they think and act in a certain way. And if you do what successful people do, you will get what successful people get. If you do what losers do, you will get what losers do get. So in life, therefore, we have gone through highs and lows, highs and lows. As long as the earth has been in existence, there have been crises, there have been highs, there have been lows, there have been dark and light, winter, summer, cold, heat, light, dark. And because of that, science has observed that whenever there is a high, if you do 1, 2, 3, you are most likely to enjoy the high. If there is a low and you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you are most likely to survive or even thrive after that low. And this is a very important thing, and that is why we can teach these things, because success leaves some clues for us to follow certain patterns of doing things. So that's the science part of it. So let's get then on to focusing on resetting your sanity. This is born out of the following statement, and this is a very critical statement that I suggest you think about it, ponder over it, and contemplate this statement. And that is, thought patterns will repeat themselves with monotonous regularity and predictability unless they are confronted, challenged, and or replaced. And by the way, because you're attending this paid session, we will email you this presentation as it is. We will email it to you so you can relax. You're welcome to take notes if you want, but you will see everything that's on the screen. It will be sent to you in this presentation format. Now, thought patterns, and remember we are dealing with sanity. We are dealing with your mind. We are dealing with your mindset, and I'll explain this. But first of all, just focus on this statement that thought patterns will repeat themselves unless they are confronted, challenged, and or replaced. whether good or bad thoughts, the way we have been designed as human beings, once we have a way of thinking, that way of thinking tends to be perpetuated relentlessly. It perpetuates itself. Once you are programmed to think in a certain way, you will continue to think that way unless there is an intention to confront, to challenge, and to replace that thinking pattern. Now, there are implications for this. What are the implications? The implications are you might have heard certain thought patterns, certain ways of thinking that produce great results for you in the old normal before a crisis came. And the crisis came and obliterated the old normal, and it gave birth to a new normal, to a new world. Guess what? It will not be automatic that now that you are in the new normal, your thinking patterns will change. It is not automatic. In fact, you are most likely to continue thinking the way you used to be, even before the crisis. The challenge, though, is those thinking patterns might have been relevant for the old world, but totally irrelevant in the new world. And you wonder why you are no longer succeeding now, even though you used to be termed or called or known as a super achiever in the old normal. But you see, the crisis has come to change things, and there is a new normal. And that is why resetting your sanity has to be an intentional thing. And there is a science behind that. And this is what we are trying to teach today. And that is why I would like you to embrace this with all your might, that you need to have an intention to change the way you think. I cannot overemphasize the importance of your mind. The importance of your mind. It has been given to you for a reason. That is why there are important statements like, as a person thinks, so they are, which means we are what we are because of the way we think. But it is critical for you to understand that a pattern of thinking that was relevant in a certain world may not be relevant in another world. And that is really the basis of why we should reset our sanity. But apart from the fact that your mindset was okay for the old world and it may not be relevant in the new world, crisis also has a way of coming to mess up the way we think. You can literally lose your mind because you are going through a difficulty. If you are going through a divorce, you can lose your mind. If your business has shut down because of COVID-19 pandemic, you can lose your mind. And it is because of this that you cannot enter the new normal with a lost mind. That is why you need to reset. You need to regain your mind. But it will now have to be a new mind because it is a new world. Against that background, therefore, please understand that the things we are talking about are broad things, such as your philosophy. When we're talking about resetting your sanity, we are talking about resetting, rethinking your philosophy. A crisis gives you an opportunity to re-examine your philosophy. Maybe it hasn't been that good anyway. A crisis gives you this chance to rethink your philosophy. Even as a country, what is our philosophy? We need to rethink that as a nation, and the crisis gives you a chance to do that. If you are in a marriage and you are fighting, you're almost divorced, or you got separated, or somebody took a fed up leave, when you are apart and when you come together again, it's a chance for you to rethink the way you have been doing your relationship business. So it is a paradigm, which is a window through which we see the world. What is our premise, for example? What is the reason for doing things? What is our thesis? And all the things that we concern the issue of the mind. What is your consciousness? What about your theory of doing things? And what about these fundamental assumptions that you have in your mind? And what about the rules of doing business? What about approaches and strategies and attitudes? And all those are in the realm of the mind. And that is why, basically, in simpler terms, to reset your sanity, it means to reset your mindset. It means to develop a new mindset, a mindset that is relevant for the new normal. And the simpler definition of the word mindset is a mindset is a mind that is set on something. That's what really a mindset is. A mindset is a mind that is set on something. So if you are set on complaining, if you are set on complaining, guess what? You will produce the results of complaining. If you have set your mind on a particular thing, it means that's where you have put your attention to. And guess what? Wherever your attention goes, that's where energy will go. So you might have set your mind on certain things in the old normal, and that kind of a mindset gave you some results. Now there's a new normal. You need to be asking a question: on what things am I going to now set my mind? Those of you who study concepts like the law of attraction, for example, it is a mindset that kicks in the law of attraction, because when you set your mind on a thing, you begin to attract things, situations, circumstances, and conditions that are in harmony with the thing you have set your mind on. For example, if you say, in the next 30 days, I'm going to buy a Volvo, you just think it. In the next 30 days, I want to buy a Volvo. I'm putting money aside and I'm putting plans into place to buy a Volvo. You are setting your mind on Volvo. And guess what will happen? From now on, as you drive around, you will see more Volvo vehicles than ever before. You will see more billboards that talk about Volvo than ever before. You will see lots of things in the website, in magazines that talk about Volvo more than ever before. It is not because all of a sudden there are many Volvos on the road, all of a sudden there are many billboards that talk about Volvo. They have always been there. You missed them because your mind was not on Volvo. But now that your mind is on the vehicle Volvo, you begin to attract situations, circumstances, conditions even people and resources and skills that are in harmony with the vulva vega. In the same way, if you are focusing, if you are setting your mind on poverty, you will attract situations, conditions, people, yes, people and circumstances that are in harmony with poverty. Now, if you set your mind on things that were relevant to the old normal, guess what? You will attract situations, circumstances, conditions, and people that are in harmony with the old normal, relevant to the old normal. Thirdly, the old normal no longer exists. So you are attracting things that belong to the world that no longer exists. And you are not attracting anything that is relevant to the new world. And that is why you need to reset your sanity, because sanity is relative. Relative in the sense that you may be sane for one world, but totally insane in another world. That is why people who are schizophrenic, those people are actually normal in their world. Believe me or not, they are very normal in their world, but extremely abnormal in our world. And I can tell you now that the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a crisis that has given birth to a new normal, has also created a lot of schizophrenic people, people who are very relevant to yesterday, but totally irrelevant and useless in today's world. And it is very possible, whether it is leadership, whether it is management, whether it is being a husband or being a wife, being a parent. Have you ever seen a parent who is relevant to yesterday but totally irrelevant to today? He really looks like a schizophrenic parent. And they are schizophrenic leaders, schizophrenic managers, schizophrenic pastors, schizophrenic all kinds of things, because they are relevant to the world that no longer exists. And I hope I'm really getting your attention up to this far. I'm really trying to convince you that please have a big goal to change your mind so you can be relevant to the new world. I'm going to say a few things and then stop for a while and ask for your inputs when I finish the spiritual side of things, so we can get into the scientific side of things. And then on the scientific side of things, we will have to be making examples using your organizations, your own experiences, etc., etc. Now, there is a man called Paul of Tarsus. I call him advocate because he was a student of law and taught by the greatest legal minds of the time. And then, of course, he was an entrepreneur as a tent maker, and he was renting those tents to the Roman Empire for the camping of their soldiers. And of course, he was a great teacher, he was a mentor, and he was a coach with a long list of proteges who were scattered across Asia and many parts of the world. And he was in the business of literally mentoring them by having conversations with them or writing letters to them. And then, of course, he had a spiritual function, which many people know him by it, and that is why he's also called apostle. But a very large part of his life was actually not just apostle. He was doing a lot of things. He was a Jewish scholar, and he was of the Jewish religion, and he got converted into the Christian religion, and he became a follower of Christ, a Christ whom he knew not in the flesh, but he knew him in the spirit. and yet he became a strong follower of him, like many of us. The gurus we follow, our serious spiritual leaders we follow, including the Christ, the people we read about, the Moseses and the others, or the Mahatma Gandhi and the Tao and the Muhammad and all others. We knew them not in flesh, but in spirit. Now, Paul was such a person. And in one of his writings, he writes the following statement. And I want you to catch it. We are now applying spiritual principles to resetting. And we will apply scientific principles to resetting shortly. Now he says, and do not be conformed to this world. So there's a particular world he's addressing. And maybe just to give you a background here, he's talking to people that have now been converted into the kingdom of light, into the world of light, from the kingdom of darkness or from the world of darkness. Now they have been converted into a new world. Now that's a spiritual concept from the old world, which is ruled by the devil with his own systems and his own standards, his own principles, his own instructions, his own precepts. Now these proteges of his, through his teachings and the teachings of some of his colleagues like Peter and others, they have now been converted or translated from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light. So these are two worlds, the world of darkness and the world of light. Now they have moved from the world of darkness to the world of light. Now he says to them, do not be conformed to the standards of the former world, this world of darkness, because now you are in the world of light. Instead, there's a need for you to transform your life. You must transform your life. And how is life transformed? It says, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Reset your mind. Set your mind on new things. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Why? That you may prove. The word prove there, it means to ascertain, it means to discern, it means to confirm. That you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God, God being the king, being the leader, being the ruler in the new world. Because if your mind is not renewed, you won't be able to perceive, you won't be able to comprehend, you won't be able to discern, you won't be able to ascertain, you won't be able to prove what are the instructions, what are the principles, what are the new rules, what are the new standards, what are the new regulations that are good, acceptable, and perfect in the new normal. Now, that's a spiritual concept. And I want you to understand that the context here is not really the physical world. These are two world systems, the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of light. But take that principle and bring it to you now in this situation. There is an old world. Be not conformed. Don't be conformed. Don't be conformed to the world that no longer exists, to the world that you used to belong to. Just like these proteges of Paul, they used to belong to the kingdom of darkness. Now they are converted into the kingdom of light. They must not be conformed to that world. Christ came to obliterate that which used to be normal to you. Now that's called the old normal. Don't be conformed to the standards, to the rituals, to the strategies, to the precepts of the old world. You need to transform your life. You need to be a changed person who will be relevant in the new normal. But how do you become a changed transformed person by the renewing of your mind, by resetting your sanity. Get a new mind, adopt new patterns of thinking. Don't allow the old patterns to repeat themselves. If you bring the old thinking, if you bring the old strategies into the new normal, you are also bringing the drama with those patterns and those strategies. Now, this is a very important thing, but there's a word there that you may prove. This is so crucial. You may prove, you may be able to ascertain what is good in the new normal, what is acceptable in the new world, what is perfect for the new world. Not every strategy is perfect for the new world. Not every approach is acceptable in the new normal. Not every attitude, not every way of thinking is actually good for the new normal. It is only when this thing happens that you will have a sane mind. Now, I'm going to stop in the next 5 minutes and get you to chat with me. But before I stop, let me show you the portrait of a sane mind. And we are going to be closing the chapter on the spirituality side. I have studied many books, excluding the medical textbooks I've studied, excluding the prescribed textbooks I've studied when I did a diploma in business management and executive development, excluding the prescribed book that I studied when I did my master's in leadership and management, excluding the prescribed books. I have studied many books. More than 2,000 books that I have personally perused and studied. One of them is the Bible. I have searched for books that talk about what you would regard to be a sane mind. And I've picked up lots of ideas from many books. But there is one book that in itself painted a picture of how a sane mind looks like. You may not like the Bible, but for the now, just pick up these nice things from it. You can forget all other things, but pick up what I'm going to show you right now. Somehow, the Bible paints a picture of how a sane mind looks like. And note that it is really one mind, but with 5 dimensions. So even though here it looks like these are different minds, but actually the way I look at it, these are dimensions or dimensions of the same sane mind. We have a pure mind, we have the right mind, we have the ready mind, we have a sound mind, and we have a do-it mind. All these minds, I get them from the Holy Scriptures. How does the Bible then define this? So I said I'll spend just 5 minutes, a minute on each, then I pause and have some of your inputs before we go scientific. But let's stay spiritual for the next 5 minutes exactly. So the first dimension of this sane mind is the pure mind. You will read this at your own time, even if you don't really like the Bible, but please do go and read 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. If at all possible, I beg you, read the whole chapter, then you'll understand that statement. Peter is one of the colleagues of advocate Paul of Tarsus. And Peter, also being an apostle, he has also written some epistles or letters to his followers. And in this particular segment of his writing, we catch him saying the following: I now write unto you to stir up your pure minds. That's how it's written in the scripture. to stir up your pure minds by way of remembrance. This tells us that there is such a thing as a pure mind. Obviously, immediately tells us that there are impure minds. And we know that to the pure, all things are pure, which means that if you are pure minded, you always look at the good side of things. You cannot have pure thoughts from an impure mind. So do your best to purify your mind, stir your pure mind. And in this case, it says, by way of remembrance, which means I want to remind you of the wonderful things that you once learned from me. And let me tell you something, there's a lot of good things that you have learned. And you were so confident at one stage, but now crisis has come. You want to give up. You call yourself, I'm a nobody. I can't make it. I can't succeed. And yet, when you look back, you have won so many battles, man. You have succeeded so much. It's like a university student who says, oh no, this is difficult. Tell that student and say, hey, you once passed biology or life sciences. You passed physics in the past. You passed chemistry. You passed that and that and that and that. Stir up your pure mind just by remembering. Sometimes all you need to do is to remember the goodness of the Lord. Sometimes when you are faced with the river Jordan, all you need to do is to remember that you once crossed the Red Sea effortlessly because of the goodness of the Lord. If it happened then, it can happen now, because the one who helped you yesterday is the same today, and he is the same even tomorrow. Stir up your pure mind. We don't want to spend too much time here, and there's a lot in the book. If you want to learn more about this, go to the book. The right mind is a dimension of the sane mind. Mark 5:15, there's a story there that's related. This is a very interesting story because if you read there, they came to Jesus and saw that one who had been demon possessed. He had been demon possessed before. They saw him sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid, meaning they were amazed. What had happened here, a little background about this, is that there was a man who was demon possessed. He was walking around, literally a schizophrenic, walking naked, never sitting down, just like typical schizophrenic people just walking on the road. They are dirty, they are not combing, sometimes naked, etc., never sitting down because the person was demon possessed. He was not in his right mind. But we learn that when Jesus Christ encountered this person, Jesus cast out the demons. Yes, he cast out the demons. After he cast out the demons, the man was free. And people were amazed for the first time. They saw this guy sitting. He has never said before, this time they saw him sitting. He was always naked. This time they saw him clothed, and he was in his right mind. Now, let me tell you something. This is a spiritual principle. You may not be demon possessed necessarily by demons, but you could be possessed by some strange thoughts. Thoughts that make you jealousy, thoughts that make you undermine others, thoughts that make you criticize yourself too much, horrible thoughts. You are not in your right mind. Now, this is a very critical thing. Make a decision. For example, if we are possessive, if we are narcissistic, if we are over controlling, you are not in your right mind. You are not in your right mind. The good thing is that you can change your mind. This is a very important thing. You can take it to another extreme where you say, I can't even make it. I can't even do stuff online. I can't see myself winning in the new normal, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can change your mind. This is a beauty. You can be in your right mind. And the mind that God created you with is the right one, is the right one. Thirdly, there is a mind called ready mind. And again, from the scripture, Acts 17:11, Paul here tells us, in fact, the scripture tells us that there were two groups of people. There were those saints who were at Berea and those who were in Thessalonica. And this statement in the writing in the book of Acts, it differentiates between the two. It says these were more noble. These, they are referring to the ones in Berea. They were more noble than those in Thessalonica. And what is the difference between the Bereans and the Thessalonians? Is that those in Berea, they received the word, or they received instructions, or they received teachings, or they received sermons, or they attended seminars and workshops. They received the word with readiness of mind. What made them to have a readiness of mind? Because they were searching whatever was taught to them daily to find out whether those things were so. So if you pick up something on WhatsApp or whatever, don't post it until you have checked whether it is so. Don't spread lies, don't spread wrong information, etc., etc. So a ready mind is a searching mind. A ready mind is an analytical mind. There's nothing wrong in analyzing. A ready mind is a mind that asks questions all the time. Unfortunately, we don't have the time because I really need to move. Sound mind. We find this recorded in 2 Timothy 1:7. And once again, Paul advising young Timothy as his protege, because people were grabbed by the spirit of fear. And he says, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but rather the spirit of power, or boldness, of love, and of a sound mind. A sound mind is a strategic mind. A sound mind is a reasoning mind. And the importance of this is that a sound mind produces a sound doctrine, and a sound doctrine produces sound practices. So if your practices are to be sound, you better be having a sound doctrine. And for your doctrine to be sound, you must have a sound mind. And then let me pause here with the last one, which is a dimension of this sane mind, and that is the do-it mind. And we pick this one up in Nehemiah 4:6. Some of you know the story of Nehemiah, who needed to go and rebuild, yes, and reposition, rebuild the broken walls of his native country. And when he went back there, he had opposition because there were enemies who were against the rebuilding of walls, because they were benefiting from corruption. They were benefiting from the ruined country. Yes, there are people who benefit when the country is in trouble. And you come and you want to build it, they become your enemies. And these people were really fighting against Nehemiah and the team as they had this rebuilding project. But they still built despite the opposition, despite the difficulties. And Nehemiah attributes this to a certain mind. And what is that? It says here, so build we the wall. Despite all the challenges, if you read the other parts of the same scripture, so build we the wall despite all these things, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof. Why? For my team members had a mind to work. There is something called a mind to work. Have you seen lazy people? Have you seen people who just talk and never work? They don't have the mind to work. They don't have the mind to work. I call it the do it mind. In the new normal, my friends, we need people with do it minds, the minds to work. So let us pause here and hear from you. It's now 7:30. I'm going to pause and allow you to breathe. you are welcome to just raise your hand and tell me what is happening in your mind right now, even as I have been speaking. You can relate this to your workplace. You can ask a specific question, or you can say, wow, something in me has been stimulated, or you can encourage me and tell me, wow, we can even close this workshop right now. I can't wait to get into a world of work and do some things, etc., etc. So talk to me. Let's see who wanna raise up your hand. This is a workshop, so please treat it exactly like you are in a workshop. You can raise up your hand. If you don't know how to raise up your hand here, you can just unmute. I see Ntsako there, his hand is up. Ntsako, I see.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, no, I just wanted to ask, out of all of the different dimensions of a sane mind, which one, firstly, do you think is the most important? I know for me which one I think is the most important, and which one do you think, as a country, do you think that we lack the most in terms of us, developing and getting to where we need to be?
Yeah, tell us first, which one do you think is the most important? You have already said you know which one you think is the most important. So tell us about your thoughts, then I will also share my thoughts.
I think, or maybe important is the wrong word to use, but, or let me just use, but I would say the do it mind, or it's maybe the hardest one to achieve, I would say,
Yeah.
because I've come across, people where they have the perfect plans and they have the right intentions and they have pretty much all of the other four sorted out, but there's always that one thing. I don't know whether it's the lack of courage or if it's fear or failure, but they, struggle to just go ahead and do what they say they're going to do, even though they have a beautiful plan and everything organized and, but in terms of actually executing, nothing happens.
Now, thank you so much for your inputs. Obviously here, and I will tell you that I personally, I believe that they are all important. But of course, in terms of whether one would say this is more important than the other, it really depends on your orientation. It depends on where you are at a given time. It depends on your experience. But also even in organizational terms, and we'll hear maybe from Bongi or Patricia and others that I know they're in the corporate world and they are leading people. Depending on the kinds of people that you are with at that particular time, you may find that you would say that one is more important, etc. So yeah, it really depends on where you are, but I get where you are. And Tsako, knowing that you are a young man, you want to see results. You are probably fed up by our country that has got lots of parliamentary sessions and cabinet meetings and portfolio committee meetings and seminar and a seminar, a seminar and a seminar, seminar. You're tired of all this talk and promises. You just want results. As a young person, it's possible that your orientation brings you to that. But this is a great a conversation. Bongi, I know you are leading a team of people. I wonder what are your thoughts you want to add before you say what you wanted to say. What would be your take in terms of which one is the most important, if there is any? But please go ahead with your thoughts, Bongi.
Okay, thanks, Doctor. Thanks for this session. It's very insightful and thought-provoking. A colleague of mine just sent me a text to say, hey, this session, you can listen to it over and over again and you'll still learn a new thing each time, because I've gone through this with you twice already. So this is the third time, but today I'm picking up new things. So one can never really say, I'm now done with the sanity component. For me, look, all components are important. It depends on the circumstances you are dealing with at that particular time. There are times where you need a sound mind. And I think you've unpacked it so well. During the pandemic, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, it was important to reset the sanity. to get that soundness of the mind, that mind that is sober. Let's call it like that, a sober mind, so that you are able to then begin to set up the strategies that one needs to set up in mitigating what this pandemic is bringing upon us. But I was not there. I was not going to talk about that. I wanted to give an example of exactly what you have unpacked now. Bring it home in a way. At the same time, I don't want to take too much time. I'm leading a committee back at home, which is called a Crisis Nerve Center. It's a CNC committee. And in the last 8 months, we were sort of dealing with short-term mitigation plans to say, okay, the president has now moved the country to alert level 3. What does this mean for our organization? But the strategy had to change. So we needed to then reset again. So we continued to reset our sanity. It's not something we had to do once. Every time the president comes and says, now we are on level 2, we needed to go back and reset our sanity to say, what does this mean for the organization? Like where we are now, we are resetting to say, okay, it looks like we are entering a post-COVID stage. What does this then mean? What is this new normal? What will it look like? What will the future of work look like? So I'm coming to the point of the mind. It was so difficult to convince my colleagues to say, we need to frame, we need to shape the new normal in a form of a policy. I had to preach and preach like you had taught us 2 weeks ago to say, you must start at the thought stage. It's a pity we didn't start with that. Start at the thought, at the philosophy, at the idea. We had to go back and show them what are the benefits. Like you would say, Mandela's theme was to give us a promised land. We had to give them a promised land that says, guys, these are the benefits. I had to quantify financially to say, if we were to set up the new normal, which could say 50% of our staff can return, 50 must always work at home, what will that mean for our business, for our cost structure, for our leases, for our people? I had to give them that promised land. And then I had to say as well, if we save, let's say 100 million, because we are resetting the stage, you are coming to the stage. If we save 100 million, I will convert this 100 million and get you a software that will make your life easy. So those are the things, colleagues, you must look forward to, that Dr. Tibane is going to teach you how to convince your audience, how to show them the promised land. Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you so much. Okay, let us move on. Others you'll comment later on because of time. Thank you so much for those comments. And also just to add that, yes, we may even be talking post-COVID in the new normal, but may colleagues also be advised that there is something called a primary crisis and there is something called a secondary crisis, meaning that the initial crisis, even if it may be gone, usually real crises give birth to a primary or a secondary crisis. It can even give birth to a tertiary crisis, which you also now need to reset because of the new normal that will be a result of crisis number 2 and no longer crisis number 1. So this resetting business is something that is going to be with us for a long time. Those of us who have experienced COVID-19, I tell you, the effects of it are going to come in different shapes as we go on. But now let's then talk about getting more now into the scientific side of resetting your sanity. And here I would like to suggest that resetting your sanity thrives on 3 thinking styles. They thrive on 3 thinking styles. And what are those styles? Discontinuous thinking, zero-based thinking. And the last one, which I'm going to be spending a bit of time on, is disruptive thinking, discontinuous thinking, zero-based thinking, and disruptive thinking. Let's go through each of these briefly and show you what it is about. Discontinuous thinking is defined as the mental courage to identify and abandon fundamental assumptions, rules, attitudes, approaches, paradigms, strategies, etc., that underpin behaviors or operations that do not or no longer produce desired results. I know it's a long definition, but it's important for you to catch what it really means. And maybe for you to understand its meaning, and let me say this. We behave the way we behave. We operate the way we operate. We act the way we act. We even interact the way we interact because of certain assumptions, because of certain rules that we hold dearly, because of certain thinking patterns, because of certain mental models and mental equivalents and certain paradigms. In other words, it is thinking patterns, it is assumptions, it is rules that influence our behaviors, our operations. Now, if your operations, your behaviors, your routines, the way you do things no longer produce desired results, even if they did yesterday, but if they no longer produce desired results because it is now a new normal, have the mental courage to identify not the behaviors, but identify their assumptions, their rules, their thinking patterns, their attitudes, their approaches that underpin those behaviors or operations that no longer give you the results you want. So if your staff members or your colleagues are engaged in certain habits, in certain behaviors, in certain operations, in certain ways of doing things, and these certain ways, operations, behaviors do not produce the desired result, don't take a hammer and hit on the habits, on the behaviors. No. Identify the assumptions they have, the attitudes they have, the paradigms they have, the philosophies they have, the mindsets they have, and influence that until there is a change in the way they think. Then there will be a change in the way they behave. Then there will be a change in the results they produce. But it's not only about them, it is also about you. Identify your own thinking patterns, paradigms, attitudes, philosophies, etc., that underpin the way you are behaving. You may be aware that you are busy with certain habits that are not serving you well. You are busy with behaviors that do not serve you well. Don't kill yourself. Just identify there's a reason why I behave the way I do. There's a thinking pattern that is producing this way of behaving, which is not serving me well. That is this continuous thinking. And that is why you must take a moment in your own time, examine your attitudes, your approaches, your mental models, philosophies, systems, etc. Then there is this beautiful a thinking style called the zero-based thinking. The zero-based thinking. This has been established by philosophers already during the times of Aristotle. But it has been in recent times or in our new world popularized by, how do I forget his name? I'll remember the name because you need to know his name, Brian Tracy. It has been popularized by Brian Tracy. And Brian Tracy has, in fact, recommended that we should ask ourselves a question. And this is the question, because the zero-based thinking is the thinking habit of continually asking yourself the following question. And what is that question? Is there anything in my business? Is there anything in my career? Is there anything in my relationships? Is there anything in my life that, knowing what I now know, I would not get into again today if I had to do it over? Is there anything in my business or in my life that, knowing what I now know, and the key phrase there is knowing what I now know. Now that I've attended this church service, now that I've attended this seminar, now that I've read this book, now that I've listened to this speaker, now that there is something new I know, is there anything in my life that I would not get into again if I were to start all over again? Now that we have learned some lessons from COVID-19 pandemic, now that we have gone through the crisis, now that I have divorced and I have learned some things out of it, now that I've been drinking like a fish and I nearly died because of liver cirrhosis, knowing what I now know, now that I have lost many employees because of my leadership style, knowing what I now know, is there anything that I would not repeat? It's a very critical question, because you see, if you don't ask this question, you will hold on to the past, even though there's a new normal. Another way of asking the question is, if I were not already doing it, would I start doing it? Because if the answer is no, I would not start doing it, then you better consider whether you should continue with that or not. Are you going to continue because you have already started? It's a very important question. If I were not already in it, would I get into it? If the answer is no, I would not get into it now. Then look at which way you can be able to get out of it. Because really, you are not supposed to be in it. You are in it because you are already in it. You are continuing because you have already started, not because it is strategic for you to continue. And that is why there's always the battle between the pain of remaining and the pain of stopping, the pain of changing and the pain of continuing. And some people, they will never get out until the pain of remaining is greater than the pain of getting out. So it's really the battle of the mind. But I'm telling you now, if the new normal demand that you need to get rid of certain things, you better do that. That is why you need to examine your products. Are there products you would not sell again, knowing what you now know? Are there processes you will not get into again, knowing what you now know? What about planning modalities? What about investments? Knowing what we now know, when a crisis like this comes, it hits on that and that, and knowing what we now know. Are there investments that would never participate in? Knowing what we now know, knowing what I now know. Is there a kind of relationship I will never be engaged in? Knowing what I now know. Very important question. And then the third question or rather the third thinking style is disruptive thinking. Disruptive thinking. Disruptive thinking is the mental power and capacity to break, literally break old rules. You're not breaking people, you're not breaking processes, you're not breaking buildings, you're not breaking anything except their rules, their assumptions, their attitudes, their approaches, their paradigms. That's what you are breaking, their assumptions, the mental power to break old rules and create new rules or new ways of working. It is the rules that you break that will disrupt the things that needs to be disrupted. But your focus is you are breaking old rules and creating new rules of doing business. That's what really leads to what we call today innovation. And then, of course, you need to examine your processes, procedures, etc., etc. But let us follow up on the idea of innovation. And here is what you would regard as a spectrum of innovation. Down there, you see nil innovation. These are people who are not involved in any innovation at all. And there are implications to this. Then you've got incremental innovation, which of course brings about evolution. This is really about making things better. And here what happens is that you have not broken the old rules. You are just making the old rules to work better. You have not broken the old ways of doing business. You are still busy with the old ways, but you have just manipulated them so that they are better. It's not the best of innovations that you want your organization to be involved in. What you are looking for is disruptive innovation. What that means is you bring about revolution. You are not making better, you are making new. You are not making better, you are making new. This is critical. You are creating new ways of doing business. Here is an example. You might have been a pastor, a youth pastor. So before COVID, there were physical gatherings. Now, incremental innovation may say, how are we going to have better physical gatherings? That is incremental innovation. Now, in the new normal, how are we going to have better physical gatherings? That may work, provided the new normal gives you space for physical gatherings. But sometimes you may find that the new normal, it's not even accommodating better ways of physical gathering. In which case, then you need a revolution, disruptive innovation. It must be new ways of gathering, not better ways of physical gathering, but new ways of gathering, which may have nothing to do with physical gathering. That's just an example. It's a disruptive way of thinking. Let me show you a practical example of this, and now being worried about my time. Oh God, and there's so much that I still needed to share with you guys. But maybe I must reset my way of teaching and not give too much information and give people time to talk. Here's an example, though, of disruptive thinking. A group of young students were asked to come up with innovation in the banking sector, in the financial sector, but specifically the banking sector. They were locked up in a hotel, in a think tank room for 7 days, and they were told, you don't get out of here until you come up with some serious innovation in the banking sector. Watch what they did. They used a simple phenomenon of distinguishing form from function. Think about it. Distinguishing form from function. And because of time, here is a quick thing that they did. They said, well, when it comes to banking, banking is essential, but banks are not. Banking is essential, but banks are not. Banking is the function. Banks are the form, the brick and mortar. Banks are a form, but banking is a function. And they said banking is essential, but banks are not. That gave birth to a serious revolution in the banking world called internet banking or telephone banking. We need banking, but we don't need banks. Believe me, we need banking, but we do not need banks. And as a result, many of even our own banks in South Africa, they would have reduced their branches, etc., because people don't need banks, but they need banking. So what do you do in this case? You reduce your investment in the form so you can have enough money to invest in the function. Other organizations like government departments, etc., you find that they invest a lot in the form. And as a result, they have got no money to invest into the improvement of the function. Believe it or not, in the absence of bank branches, we have better banking today. Yebo, in the absence, even though of course it affects employment, blah, blah, that's a different story altogether. But I'm really talking about the function has become much more better as the banks invest more money into improving their banking. But if they were still putting lots of money into the form, into the banks, into the structures, they would not have enough money to invest into the function. I want you to practicalize this and personalize it to yourself. Could it be that you are really investing lots of money in the form and there is no money to be invested in the function? Maybe you spend lots of money on how you look, but there is no money being spent on how you will impact your customers, how you will impact others. Listen, we need movies, but we don't need movie houses. Well, we need them, but we don't really need them. Movies are essential, but movie houses are not essential. Fellowshipping as Christians is essential, but church buildings are not essential. Whether you like this or not, I tell you the truth. I miss church, meeting with people, but I'm telling you, even in the absence of a church building, you can still be a saint. You can still be a Christian. So these are the challenges that we're going to be battling with. Unfortunately, our time is up and I still need to give you a chance to talk to me if you would like to talk to me. And maybe I'll give you a bonus next time when we meet talking about resetting your site. I will start with what is remaining here, how to develop a new mindset, and I'll make an example of a business mindset because this is a critical aspect of the science side of things. But let's have your thoughts, guys. I know that I've taken too much of your time. I did not give you enough time. This is my sin, but I trust that the Lord has forgiven me and you have forgiven me too. But let's maybe spend some 5 minutes or so getting some thoughts from you guys if you want to. But maybe whilst you're preparing for that, just to let you know, so that I don't forget at the end, to let you know that, of course, next Wednesday we continue with this session, and it is going to be resetting your site. Those ones I was just showing you there at the bottom, that the next set of the sessions will be 17, 24, and 31st of March. But before those, there will be a reset your sale that will be free for everybody, and then you will enroll or register for the other last three. But long before we get into that, of course, next week we'll do reset your site, and then the following week we're going to do reset your stage. Then we have a break from the paid session, and then do reset your sales as a free session, etc. And then, of course, the issue of registering for that will also be necessary. But I would like to thank you for having joined us on this particular session. But let me please open the floor for colleagues. If you want to say something, I know that our time is up, but please, we still have some 5 minutes beyond our time. Please chat to me if you want to. And also, once again, we will send you the presentation as it is. We will send it to you, and the fact that we have paid for this session, my email will be open to you for you to bounce some ideas with me, on the things that we have talked about or any other things in your life as it pertains to resetting and thriving in the new normal, I will be your feedback partner and I will be your sounding board. So these are the benefits of attending the paid sessions. But talk to me, please raise up your hand if you can. I see Patricia, your hand is up. Talk to us, Patricia.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Tibane, for the time. So for me, what I find interesting is when you speak about the disruptive thinking. So I would marry that to when you talk about the two types of mindset, where you have growth mindset and fixed mindset. So what I do in my team, we always have a challenge where normally I don't tell them what to do. I'll ask them, what is it that they want to do? And obviously, and so we focus mostly, obviously you have those guys with fixed mindset where they would say, when I'm frustrated, things like I give up when I'm frustrated, I don't like to be challenged, or I don't like challenge. That's kind of my fixed mindset, where they would say, things are fine the way they are working, but I always challenge that and, channel them to have the growth mindset where they know that they can learn anything and they can do anything they want to do, and where they accept feedback as a gift, because the fixed mindset, they don't like feedback. It's where they just resist the feedback and they feel that they're being criticized. So with the growth mindset, so I would marry the disruptive thinking where you talk about innovation with a growth mindset. And that's the kind of mindset that we all need to have. Being a leader or being, whatever you do in your life, personal space, you need that growth mindset, because, you can never stop learning, and it gives you opportunities to grow, where you just question and obviously you get disrupted. You disrupt anything that is not in line with your future. And you wake up in the morning, you think, okay, what is it that I can do to disrupt anything that is not in line with my future? And if you do that, then you know exactly what is in line with your future, and you know exactly what is not in line with your future when we have that growth mindset. So that's what I wanted to share for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you so much for sharing that insight and on the issues of growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Yeah, thank you so much. That's incredible. Any other person who wants to share some thoughts? Okay, I know it's late. That could be the reason why we're not seeing hands. But thank you so much. I'm going to give over to Tinashe, who struggled to join us at the beginning, but I can see him that he did finally join us. He's our operator. He's our middle office person, back office person who make these things work. You didn't have music in the beginning because he struggled to join us. If he is able to, you always have music before we start. Tinashe, any announcements quickly, and then we release the colleagues. And Tinashe, please tell me that the attendees will also get the recording I hope it was recorded, seeing that you came a little late, you were struggling. But talk to us, Tinashe.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Yes.
All right. Yeah. So I need to work on my devices here. Even as you are speaking, things are frozen. So apologies. It's been an interesting day of fighting with technology. Thank you for this session. Thank you all for participating. I did manage to record it. I'll download it from the cloud and I will package it properly and send it to you. Thank you for spending this 1 hour, 30 minutes and 30 or so minutes with us. The only announcement is do invite more of your friends, your colleagues, invite family, church members that they are at a decision-making level, or that they are responsible for certain businesses or departments or functions that need to hear this. We are dealing with important things today. your sanity. Sako mentioned that, you know, the do-it mind is lacking. One would say all of the above. But the point is, it's very important stuff and content we covered today, and many, many more need to hear this. So I urge you, I plead with you, it's for their benefit. That this is literally just, you know, not even an announcement. It's just me reaching out to you and asking you if you know anybody that you think is struggling. Maybe it's a small business and they can't navigate this environment. You know, this would be a good place to learn. I don't want to talk too much. We've already taken much of your time. We will start again next week on exactly on 12:30. We'll be ready. Apologies for today again. I had challenges with my laptop. But expect these notes and yeah, everything else that you may request by Friday. So this Friday, we will send it to you via email. Thank you. Back to you, Prof.
Thank you so much. May God bless you. We can release you now. Unless if someone's hand was up. Patricia, thank you so much. Bongi, thank you. Ria, thank you so much. Dumi, thank you so much for joining us today. And we shall see you again next week, same time, 6:30. Thank you so much. All right. Hey, colleagues, Alamein, I don't see Alamein. Alamein, I think, is gone. Ntsako, are you okay? Tinasha, are you okay?
Yeah, no, good.
We are well, Doc. Are you still sharing your screen?
Let's see. You want me to stop sharing? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just trying to diagnose my laptop. It's been misbehaving today.
No problem. I realized that when you were not joined, because you normally join a few minutes before, I realized, you know what, let me rather start. But fortunately, you know, that first slide that I always use, which you guys created, at least I was able to show that. But thank you so much. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. We will probably have our meeting offsite when I think Dr. Alamein may have connectivity challenges, so that we see how we can make it better next week. But thank you very much for this. I was recording. Let me try to, okay, it's not even allowing me to stop recording. I don't know if you can stop the recording from your side.
Okay, let's see here.